Revenge with Karen.
The last time anyone thanked me at that office was 3 fiscal years ago, and even then it was by accident. They meant to thank Cheryl in finance for catching a double payment. I caught it first, of course, like I always do, because I'm the one who built the damn framework that prevents that kind of nonsense in the first place. Vendor compliance, contract leakage. I practically wrote the training manual. But go ahead, keep thinking the magic elves sorted your procurement disaster before audit season. I'm sure Cheryl enjoyed the plant you sent. I've been at Gallagher Investments for 12 years, long enough to see 3 COOs, 7 reorgs, and one very memorable moment where a junior analyst tried to expense a hot air balloon ride in Napa as a client engagement. I blocked it before it hit AP, quietly slipped a sarcasm-laced note into his quarterly review file. Next time, try something less flammable. My job isn't flashy, but it's essential. Contracts don't just flow through me, they answer to me. Every outdated clause, every missing appendix, every shady vendor trying to sneak in a retroactive rate hike, I catch them all. I've got binders older than some of the interns. I've stayed under the radar for a reason. When you're good at cleaning messes, people stop noticing you until there's a mess. Enter Brent. Brent with the jawline, Brent with the golf swing. Brent who spells team player like it's a branded hashtag. He came in mid-quarter with a too shiny watch and a father on the board. His handshake was too hard, like he'd practiced it in front of a mirror. He called me ma'am in the tone you use when you're about to fire someone or ask for extra napkins. Within a week, I was off 3 email chains I had started, no longer invited to the weekly vendor alignment calls I'd run since 2017. I said nothing. I watched. I documented. You learn a few things in ops. 1. Never let emotion bleed into process. 2. Always keep a paper trail. And 3. The moment they stop inviting you is the moment they start needing you the most. Brent thought he was cleaning house. He called it streamlining and agility realignment, called it cutting the brake lines while still on the freeway. And wouldn't you know it, 2 weeks after my access to vendor logs was cut, he greenlit a deal with a software supplier flagged last year for data breach nondisclosure. Cute. I made a copy of the approval timestamp, just in case. Now, I know you're wondering why I didn't speak up sooner. Why I let Brent slither his way through those meetings like a discount motivational speaker with a slide deck full of cliches. Simple, there's no reward for the warning bell. There's only respect for the one who pulls the fire alarm after smoke starts curling under the door. And hey, if you're still with me here, first of all, thank you. Second of all, if you're one of the 95% of folks who forget to tap that subscribe or like button, this is your polite nudge. We're just getting started, and trust me, watching Brent's slow-motion downfall is going to be worth every second. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled erosion of logic. By month 2, Brent had reimagined the org chart. My role now fell under contract oversight light, which is a made-up title as flimsy as the espresso machine he insisted we install in the break room. He didn't fire me. That would require spine. No, Brent wanted plausible deniability. He wanted me bored, boxed in, and slowly obsolete. Death by 1,000 Outlook calendar rejections told people I preferred to work behind the scenes, that I was transitioning out of high-impact operations. Translation: I was being surgically removed from visibility without the courtesy of anesthesia. Fine. I spent the next week cleaning my files, not deleting, just organizing. There's a difference. I made backups of all contracts tied to the upcoming fiscal cycle. I reviewed club memberships, vendor access lists, lunch meeting reservations, because while Brent was busy trying to play CEO in training, I remembered one tiny detail he never even thought to ask: that prestigious Bellridge Club. The one he booked for a high-profile client lunch. Yeah, I helped rewrite their ethics charter 5 years ago. And that little clause about improper corporate usage. It's about to become very, very relevant. I showed up to the Bellridge Club in my usual black slacks and navy blazer. Nothing flashy, just the kind of outfit that says, I'm not here for the shrimp cocktail. I wasn't expecting a red carpet, but I also wasn't expecting to stand there like a stray dog while Brent's little entourage snickered into their sparkling waters. 7 chairs. 6 filled, 1 empty. The one with my name nowhere to be found. Carol, chirped Brent's assistant Lexi, her voice dipped in artificial sweetener and smugness. Oh, you're here. We weren't sure you got the calendar update. Her ponytail was so tight I could see the strain behind her eyes. I blinked. The one sent at 11:43 p.m. last night that regretfully adjusted the guest list due to capacity constraints. Lexi's lips curled. Exactly. But you know she leaned in like she was about to offer me a mint or a middle finger. Perhaps leaving suits you better. Behind her, Brent didn't even look up. It was already mid-story about leveraging boutique strategy realignments to the client, an older gentleman in a pressed tan suit who looked like he'd rather be golfing with gout than listening to Brent misuse buzzwords. I caught the way the client glanced at me. Brief, uncertain, a flash of discomfort. Then back to Brent's voice, which sounded like someone reading a car warranty backwards. No introductions, no acknowledgement. Could feel the heat rise in my neck like bad gin. I nodded slowly. Of course, I said. I turned on my heel and walked out, passing by the doorman who looked more upset about the situation than anyone inside. Outside, the October wind tugged at my jacket. Leaves scraped across the limestone patio like disapproving whispers. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I sat on the stone bench next to the lion-shaped planter and took out my phone, pulled up the contact labeled GM Bellridge Personal. Texted, violation of clause 6.2c in progress. Client lunch misused to publicly demote internal staff. Conduct review requested. Hit send. Then, because I'm human, I opened my Photos app and found a shot from 3 years ago, me, the Bellridge Board, and the Ethics Subcommittee, all smiles after we'd ratified the new code of conduct. I looked younger then. Less weary, more patient. Spent 6 months drafting that document. 6 months combing through every misuse, every shady workaround, every oops from rich idiots who treated club policy like a light suggestion. That work is what gave me the authority to send that text just now. That clause, the one I invoked, was mine. My wording. My signature. Inside, I could hear Brent's voice bouncing off the glass walls like a malfunctioning air fryer. He was launching into his favorite story about how his fraternity fundraiser taught him everything he knows about market dynamics. The sound of it made my teeth itch. I watched the window. The reflection of my face was faint, floating behind the frosted logo etched in gold leaf. I looked like a ghost they forgot to bury properly. Good. Let them think I was gone. Let them sip their little mocktails and flash their club passes like they meant something. Let them feel like they'd won. Because the thing about humiliation, when you wear it right, it turns into armor. And I wasn't here for the hors d'oeuvres. I was here to bury Brent, quietly, efficiently, like I do everything. But first, I waited. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. One word, received. I stood, smoothed the front of my blazer, and gave the lion planter a little pat on its mossy head. Then I walked calmly to my car, smiling the whole way. I didn't sleep that night, not out of rage or sadness. I was too busy remembering. After the lunch, I drove home in the kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from strategy. The kind of silence that wraps around you when your enemy mistakes your retreat for surrender. I parked, fed my cat, made tea that tasted like wet cardboard, and sat down to draft the cleanest little resignation from client work email you've ever seen. Subject: client lunch. Appreciation and next steps body. Hi Brent, thank you for including me in today's meeting at Bellridge. I understand the current client direction may not require my continued involvement, and I trust the transition will be smooth under your leadership. Please consider this my offer to step back from all client-facing operations to better align with evolving team structure. Wishing you and the team success in the partnership. Kind regards, Carol. No sarcasm. Oh venom, just enough warmth to convince HR I wasn't plotting to poison the coffee machine. Brent replied in under 10 minutes with the enthusiasm of a Labrador that just humped its first couch cushion. Subject: problem solved, forwarded to CEO, HR, and the firm's leadership momentum channel, because of course we have one. I imagined him hitting send with a little fist pump, then spinning his mouse like a roulette wheel. Perfect. Back in my home office, the room I lovingly call the vault, I opened the internal systems access log, clicked into the vendor platform, downloaded a full CSV of my permissions, timestamps, and Brent's edit trail. See, here's the thing. I'd been slowly collecting these. Every meeting I was cut from, every document I was locked out of, every oversight that just so happened to undermine a decade's worth of institutional knowledge. And now that I'd offered to remove myself, well, now they had a pattern. Still, I wasn't after HR complaints. That's Brent's game. Sloppy politics, bactional winks, the kind of passive aggression that smells like a frat house trying to host a TED talk. I don't care for war. I prefer erasure. Quiet, efficient, surgical. After logging the latest access update, I made myself another cup of tea this time, chamomile instead of regret, and pulled a thick binder off the shelf. It was dusty, full of post-its, and those annoying paper clips that bite your fingers. The cover was embossed with gold. Bellridge Club Code of Conduct 2018 revision. Most people don't know this, but Bellridge went through a pretty brutal scandal about 6 years ago. Something involving a legacy member, an intern, and an alcohol-fueled networking night that ended with lawsuits and PR carnage. The board was forced to rebuild the entire ethics structure from scratch. As who volunteered to help rewrite it? Not because I needed the title, but because I hate loopholes. They fester. They breed entitlement. Clause 6.2c. No member, regardless of status, may use Bellridge facilities to orchestrate or carry out any corporate activity that results in the public demotion, humiliation, or exclusion of any party directly tied to said corporation's operational function. That clause, it's not just ink, it's my signature. My damn initials in the margin. And Brent, in his arrogant quest to become king of the client circuit, had just broken it on club property with a witness and photographic evidence. I knew Lexi posted to Instagram during lunch. She always tags the location, desperate for influencers to like her charcuterie shots. I scrolled through her profile. Sure enough, client power lunch with the dream team briefcase sparkles, #Bellridge, #dealmakers, #where's Malat in the background of the photo. A half-filled water glass. A vacant chair, my chair, evidence. I screenshotted it, labeled the file. Exhibit A poetic justice. Then I sat back and stared at the framed Bellridge thank you letter on my shelf. The one that read, "Carol, your work helped rebuild trust where we feared none could be found. Your clarity, ethics, commitment to fairness made this place stronger. On behalf of the board, thank you." Signed by the general manager and 2 sitting board members. Let Brent think he won. Let the CEO pat him on the back. Because while they were busy clinking glasses and jerking each other's egos off in luxury chairs I practically paid for, I was holding the map of the minefield they were dancing on. And I had just lit the match. Back then, the Bellridge boardroom smelled like old cigars, mahogany, and denial. It was the kind of room where men still used the word gal and thought HR was just a suggestion. I remember the meeting clearly. One of the founding members, let's call him Harold, because that was his name, was sitting there red-faced and shaking, trying to explain how it wasn't nepotism that his son landed a private hedge fund presentation in the ballroom, while 2 legitimate applicants were turned away for capacity reasons. Son showed up in boat shoes, didn't even button his collar. The fallout was swift by Bellridge standards anyway. A PR leak, a quiet settlement, and a string of groveling phone calls that all ended with the same realization. The club's reputation was bleeding out faster than its brandy budget. That's when they asked for help. Not from Harold, obviously, from people like me, people who understood structure, policy, how to build systems that don't bend when legacy privilege tries to steamroll them. I didn't just join the committee, I rewrote the damn rulebook. We held 8 workshops, 3 board hearings, and 1 spectacular shouting match where a tech exec insisted that ethics don't scale. He quit after I pointed out that his startup had 4 lawsuits pending for misclassifying interns. Pity. The new Bellridge charter became a model, blend of operational integrity and image restoration. And right in the middle of it, between the dress code and alcohol use policy, we carved out a new clause, one that would have stopped Harold's little family power play in its tracks. Clause 6.2c. No member or guest may utilize Bellridge facilities in a manner that results in the targeted exclusion, demotion, or reputational harm of any professional party associated with the member's organization. Board-level stakeholders may initiate conduct review at their discretion. I remember fighting for that last line. Why board level? One exec asked. Because influence needs teeth, I said. And if someone tries to hide abusive power in a linen napkin and lobster bisque, they need to know someone's watching. That clause passed by a single vote. Now, present day, 5 years and 1 Brent later, I was about to invoke it for the first time. No grand gestures, no loud accusations. I simply opened the Bellridge ethics portal, logged in using my old credentials, and submitted a level 2 stakeholder flag. Attached Lexi's Instagram photo. Noted the calendar discrepancy. Listed the guest names. Described the scene of exclusion. Marked it under reputational damage. When it asked for my statement, I typed, Intentional marginalization of operations lead during publicly branded client engagement. Clause 6.2c breached. Board review requested. I clicked submit. A green checkmark appeared, flag received. Response time 72 hours, that was Monday night. By Tuesday morning, the GM's assistant called. Calm, respectful. Miss Gardner, we've begun our internal review. Thank you for your diligence, as always. No questions. No request for elaboration, because here's the thing about the old world and its secret rules. They're only secret to the people too arrogant to read the manual. Brent didn't even know a board like ours existed. He thought the club was just appetizers and valet service, a place to show off cufflinks and pitch decks. He never stopped to wonder who maintained the ground he strutted on. He thought power was in the seating chart. He forgot who wrote the damn layout. Back at the office, Brent was riding high. I watched him from my cubicle. Yes, he made me move to a cubicle, bragging about his impression management skills to the same junior execs who used to ask me how to submit expense reports. He ordered new business cards. VP, Strategic Engagements. It was cute. I spent lunch watching Bellridge's internal dashboard. At 12:42 p.m., my flag was escalated to Board Ethics Review. And by 3:17, system marked it, acknowledged by board chair. No emails, no alerts, just that quiet, steady machinery. I closed my laptop and went for a walk. The sun was out, the air tasted like leaves and burnt coffee. I passed a group of interns sharing a cigarette behind the loading dock. One of them nodded at me. Hey, aren't you the one who blocked that shady vendor deal last year? I smiled. Still am. And then I kept walking, because sometimes the best kind of justice doesn't come from yelling. It comes from knowing exactly which strings to pull, and watching as the puppet show collapses, one thread at a time. Wednesday morning started with a ping from LinkedIn. Not an endorsement, not a connection request from some college freshman trying to break into finance. This one was from Martin Keene, the client Brent had been parading around like a prize goat at county fair. His message was short, vague, pointed, hope to see you at lunch next week. No exclamation mark, no follow-up, just the kind of passive-aggressive corporate poke that says, I saw what happened and I'm not as stupid as your VP hopes I am. I stared at the screen for a beat, then typed, looking forward to a more complete meeting. Sent it, no need for flair. Let the subtext do the punching. 15 minutes later, my personal line rang. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the voice on the other end was smooth, deliberate, like someone used to giving orders quietly. Miss Gardner, said the Bellridge GM, Everett Lang, we've reviewed the usage policy. Thank you for the heads up. That was all he said. That was the message. A pause stretched between us. I could almost hear the rich leather of the club's chairs creaking beneath the weight of unspoken consequences. You're welcome, I said softly. Everett cleared his throat once, kind of sound that meant you've done your part. Now let us do ours, and hung up. I sat back and looked around my newly demoted cubicle. The fake plant Lexi left as a team spirit gift sat wilted in the corner. My old office, glass walls, corner window, now held a monitor the size of a microwave and a junior analyst who chewed gum like it owed her money. Brent passed by on his phone, laughing too loud. Yeah, it's locked in. He loved the Bellridge setup, said it was elegant without trying too hard. He bragged to someone, probably his dad or his reflection. He gave me a quick nod, then a second, longer glance. Maybe he noticed the faint smile on my face, or maybe he was just trying to remember if I was the one who used to refill the printer ink. Hard to tell with Brent. Most of his thoughts ricocheted off his skull before they could form. Big day Monday, he added, pointing finger guns at nobody in particular. Indeed, I said. He walked off, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the hallway glass like he was prepping for a GQ cover shoot. He had no idea. Back at my desk, I pulled up my Bellridge board login. The ethics flag was now labeled resolution, pending member action required. I didn't need to act again. That's the beauty of a good system. It runs itself once you wind it up right. Later that afternoon, the client emailed Brent's assistant asking for a seating chart and meeting agenda for the lunch. Lexi forwarded it to me with a note. Can you prep this like you used to? Just for old time's sake. Oh, the irony. I stared at the message for a second before replying. I've been removed from client-facing responsibilities. As per Brent's streamlining initiative. No smiley face. No passive-aggressive jab. Just a reminder, kind that lingers like smoke after a candle's blown out. That evening, I returned to Bellridge. Not for strategy, not for paperwork, just for dinner. As a board-level stakeholder, I had access to the members' private dining room, 4 tables, hushed lighting, a wine list thicker than Brent's resume. I ordered the salmon and a whiskey neat. Mid-meal, Everett walked past and gave a nod. "We're making a few layout adjustments for Monday," he said quietly. "You'll be pleased." I raised my glass slightly. Always appreciate thoughtful hospitality. He didn't smile. Club managers don't smile, they acknowledge. As I finished my meal, I watched a couple of junior members clumsily try to impress a pair of consultants at the far table. They laughed too loud, gestured too wide. I saw myself in one of them 10 years ago, before I learned the power of shutting up and watching. By the time I left, the autumn air had turned sharp. Valet handed me my keys with a crisp, "Have a good evening, Miss Gardner." I drove home slow, letting the night fold over me like a well-worn coat. Brent was prepping for his big win. I was just setting the table. Monday morning arrived wrapped in that fake calm the office gets right before something breaks. Phones buzzed louder. Footsteps moved quicker. Brent wore a charcoal suit he clearly thought made him look powerful, though the cuffs were still too long, like a kid playing CEO in his dad's closet. He was grinning like a man who thought the script was his to direct. At 10:07 a.m., his assistant Lexi's voice cracked across the open floor. "Wait, what do you mean the room's been changed?" She clutched her iPad like it might suddenly explain everything if she just squeezed it hard enough. A junior staffer from facilities had wandered over with a clipboard and shrugged. "GM said the Sapphire Room's been reassigned for confidentiality protocol. You're moved to Veranda East." Brent, within earshot, froze for just a second but quickly recovered. "Even better. Better lighting in there anyway," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. But his smile thinned by half. Veranda East wasn't worse. It was smaller, more intimate, less performative, no wall of glass. Fewer theatrics. It was also where Bellridge held all its board-related ethics hearings. Lexi, still rattled, muttered something about catering and ran off to call the kitchen. Her voice got higher the longer the call went on. "They changed the menu. Who authorized? No, he's allergic to shellfish. Are you insane?" I arrived at Bellridge 20 minutes before the lunch began. No fanfare. No entourage. Just me, a navy coat, and a slim leather folder under my arm. Valet took my keys wordlessly. The GM himself met me at the door, expression as neutral as ever. "Miss Gardner, thank you for coming." He didn't ask if I wanted to be walked in. He just led the way. Veranda East had been reset entirely. The long, ostentatious table from the original room had been replaced with a compact round one. 4 chairs, no more, name cards in minimalist font. Bottled still water and a single orchid in the center. At the head of the table, the chair with the full view of the entrance, the prime sightline of every movement, my name sat printed in clean, black ink. Carol Gardner. No title, no suffix, just presence. The GM gestured. "Please," I sat, smooth, deliberate. Lexi entered 3 minutes later, saw me, and hesitated just long enough for the panic to show before schooling her face back into corporate composure. Behind her, Brent strode in like nothing was wrong, till he saw me and paused. It was brief, maybe a second, but his eyes widened just enough. His shoulders stiffened just slightly. He scanned the table, did the mental math. 4 seats, client not here yet, and Carol already seated. He masked it fast. "Carol, didn't expect you to be joining today," he said, slipping into the extra warm tone men use when they realize their assumptions are catching fire in real time. "Likewise," I said, "I appreciate the reassignment. Veranda East has excellent acoustics." He chuckled, "Too loud, right? Right? And hey, they got the catering sorted, right, Lex?" Lexi looked like she'd aged 6 years in the last 30 minutes. "They made executive decisions. I wasn't consulted." "Well," Brent said, sitting down with a casualness that looked more like defeat in slow motion, "flexibility is leadership." The door opened. Martin Keene entered, perfectly on time, looking like he'd just walked off a yacht he owned purely out of boredom. He scanned the table, saw me, and gave a polite nod. "Carol." "Martin," I said, rising slightly in greeting. Brent jumped in like a golden retriever off a dock. "Martin, so good to." Martin gestured toward his seat. "May I?" "Of course." Brent motioned, then caught himself and let Martin sit without further commentary. The air in the room shifted, subtle, but noticeable. Martin's glance toward me wasn't just recognition, it was alignment. Brent cleared his throat and began his pitch. Voice steady, but a beat slower than usual. Lexi fumbled her notes. The shrimp risotto, definitely not what she ordered, arrived with a flourish and was met with an arched eyebrow from Martin, who took one look and said dryly, "Interesting choice." Brent laughed nervously. Little mix-up, I think. But hey, life's full of surprises. I sipped my water, 'cause the biggest surprise was how easy it was to make a man sweat without raising your voice, without lifting a single weapon. Just by sitting in a chair they thought would stay empty. Halfway through Brent's presentation, some jargon-stuffed ramble about portfolio symbiosis that sounded like it had been yanked from the back of a cereal box. The door to veranda east creaked open. The GM stepped inside, silent as a surgeon, a folded linen white note in his hand. Didn't speak, didn't ask for attention. Just walked the perimeter of the room with the patience of a chess player approaching checkmate. He stopped behind Brent, placed the note gently at his side, and leaned down just enough to whisper. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw it land. Brent's shoulders stiffened. His hand froze on the table. His lips parted slightly like he wanted to object, but didn't know how. The GM straightened, with a polite nod to the rest of the table, and left. Door closed behind him with the softness of a warning. Brent's eyes dropped to the note. For a moment, I thought he might actually sweat through his blazer. He didn't read it out loud. Of course not. But whatever was on that paper, it peeled back every layer of his fake calm like paint melting off a cheap rental wall. Martin Keene, ever the tactician, let the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. He turned toward me, calm as a lake in October. Carol, he said, just out of curiosity, were you involved in the room reassignment? Brent's head snapped up, eyes wide. I took a slow sip of water, set the glass down neatly, folded my hands. I suppose influence comes in different forms, I said. Martin chuckled once under his breath, not a big laugh, just enough to say noted. Brent tried to regain ground. Look, what matters is the deliverables. His voice cracked halfway through the word. He cleared his throat, tried again. I think we've all seen the numbers, another crack. His pitch was unraveling like a bargain necktie in the rain. Lexi scribbled something furiously in her notebook, probably a prayer or a request for early severance. Martin didn't interrupt. He let Brent keep talking, digging the hole with each stammering sentence. But I could tell he wasn't listening anymore. He was studying, taking mental notes. Brent's panic, of my stillness, of the way power had quietly rearranged itself across the table. Brent began flipping through a laminated chart like it held the cure for awkward silence. As you can see on slide 4, we've positioned our real estate portfolio for. Martin held up a hand. Brent stopped mid-syllable. I did see the slides, Martin said flatly. Carol, are you still involved in compliance oversight? I looked at Brent. Looked like a man watching his house catch fire through bulletproof glass. I've stepped back from formal client interaction, I replied gently, at the request of internal restructuring. Martin raised an eyebrow, curious choice. Brent tried to recover. Carol's great at what she does, no doubt, but we wanted to diversify the engagement flow. It was the corporate equivalent of blaming gravity for your own tripwire. Martin leaned back in his chair. Well, I hope that strategy pays off. Then he said nothing more. Brent resumed the pitch, but it had lost all momentum. His words came fast now, almost rushed, like he could outrun the room itself. But the energy had changed. The air in veranda east was thick with something Brent couldn't see. It wasn't anger. It wasn't confrontation. It was judgment. And judgment, when done right, is quiet. It was in the silence after each of Brent's sentences, the way Martin's pen never touched his notebook again. The way Lexi stopped writing halfway through a bullet point and just sat. By the end of the meeting, Brent looked like he'd aged 5 years. I, on the other hand, hadn't moved an inch. The lunch ended not with applause or handshakes, but with the kind of silence that makes men sweat through their undershirts. Martin stood, nodded once to me, then to Brent, shorter, cooler, and left with no talk of follow-ups or next steps, no promise of next quarters. Just a quiet exit and the hollow clink of silverware still trembling on china. Brent stood motionless for a beat too long, like he was trying to telepathically rewind the last hour. Lexi busied herself with napkins and wine glasses, overcompensating like a ship's steward cleaning up after a failed voyage. I gathered my folder, slid it into my bag, and left without a word. No smile, no stare, just absence. By 3:15 p.m., the firm's office was buzzing with whispers. The client had gone cold. The CEO's calendar had blocked out an urgent realignment slot, and Brent's door, normally wide open for walkbys and ego strokes, was shut tight. At 4:02, he was called into the CEO's office, and at 4:06, the CEO's voice carried, louder than I think he intended, but quiet enough to pretend he didn't mean it. Why the hell wasn't Carol involved in that meeting? Brent's reply, muffled but unmistakable. We were streamlining roles. She was excess process. Excess process. That's what he called the person who wrote the entire vendor intake protocol. The person who prevented $1 million security breach by catching a data clause typo before legal ever saw it. I was excess. At 4:10, the compliance officer was brought in. June Park. Smart. Quiet. Sees everything. Just following up on something Carol flagged, she said, cool as ever. There are some discrepancies in the club's usage expenses. Catering billed under the compliance budget, and a double booking under travel and client entertainment for the same lunch. Also, Carol wasn't listed as an attendee on any of the submitted documentation, but her name was included in the pre-approved invoice estimates. Brent stammered. I could imagine his face, confused, irritated, pulling the levers he thought still worked. I delegated that to Lexi, he said. Lexi doesn't have signatory authority, June replied. You do. By 5 o'clock, Brent was still in the office, pacing. Red-faced. Phone clutched in his hand like it might save him. I didn't say a word, didn't offer clarification. I just emailed HR a revised copy of the operations contract Martin had originally been brought in to discuss, a version from 6 weeks ago, and with a crucial appendix Brent had removed without notifying legal. I attached no note, just the file. No accusations, just version control. At 5:22, June sent a single-line email to the CEO. Contract revision omitted key compliance clause. See attached timeline from Carol Gardner. At 5:40, I got a reply from the CEO. Thank you for the clarification. No apology, no groveling, just acknowledgement. And that was enough, because I wasn't after his guilt. I wasn't here to make Brent grovel or to turn the office against him. I just wanted the truth to be documented. Let the math work itself out. That night, as I left the building, Brent was still holed up in the conference room with June and the CEO. His tie had loosened. His voice carried through the glass like a man pleading with the universe to stop rotating. I passed Lexi in the break room. She gave me a small, brittle smile. I returned it. In the elevator, I checked my email one last time. Nothing from Brent, but a new one from Martin. Appreciate your clarity. Let me know when you're leading things again. No signature, just that. I stepped out into the October dusk. The sky was gray and bruised, like the end of a storm that never quite hit, but left everything just a little altered. Vindication doesn't come with trumpets. Sometimes, just walks quietly out the front door with its head high and its hands clean. The boardroom was colder than usual. Not in temperature, Bellridge never lets the HVAC slip, but in atmosphere. It had that layered stillness you only get when something significant is about to shift. The kind of quiet where people check their notes twice, but pretend they aren't watching the door. The quarterly board review had started like any other. Updates, charts, or laughter over catered muffins. But then Martin Keene cleared his throat and leaned forward, folding his hands the way only power does when it's about to drop a weight. I'll make this simple, he said. Our firm won't be moving forward on the operations alignment unless Carol Gardner is reinstated as lead. Silence. Then a flicker of reaction, small movements, exchanged glances. Brent shifting uncomfortably in his seat like the chair had grown teeth. CEO didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. He opened a slim folder, flipped to a familiar form, pulled out a Montblanc pen that hadn't been used since the last acquisition signing, and paused. Then, without a word, he looked up, met my eyes, and gave the smallest, most deliberate nod I've ever received. He signed. No speech. No apology. Just ink on paper and a quiet correction of mistake he hadn't had the guts to prevent. Brent stared at the signature like it was written in a language he'd never bothered to learn. No one asked for his input. No one looked at him. It was over before he even realized it had started. The announcement was made without ceremony. Carol Gardner, reinstated as head of operations, effective immediately. By week's end, Brent submitted his resignation to pursue new opportunities. His farewell email was 3 paragraphs too long and 2 adjectives too desperate. He thanked no one by name, not even Lexi, who'd taken 3 sick days in a row and left her inspirational quotes calendar flipped back to July. They cleared out his office in under an hour. The janitor took down the Think Big poster. The framed certificate from a week-long seminar in Arizona disappeared like it had never mattered, which, of course, it hadn't. I didn't move back into my old office right away. I didn't need to. Titles don't feel urgent when your name already carries the weight. That Friday evening, I returned to Bellridge. Alone, no agenda, no meeting, no high-stakes lunch with clients who measure worth by wristwatch brands. Just me and the club I helped shape. Everett, the GM, met me at the entrance with the faintest smile and a tumbler of amber-colored clarity. "Veranda East is open," he said simply. I nodded, walked the familiar hallway. The walls hadn't changed. The air had, it felt earned. Inside, the table was set for one. I sat at the head, the same head they once withheld from me, the chair they left empty when they thought I was invisible. It was mine now, not because I demanded it, but because I let them reveal what happens when you underestimate the architect of the floor you're standing on. I raised my glass slowly, to the empty chair across from me, the one they gave to Brent, the one that couldn't hold its weight, a quiet toast, to the ones who think silence means surrender, to the ones who never see you coming until their reflection is in your glass. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.